Hello, my name is Margaret Malpass, and I'm delighted that you can join me today to look at networking. It's going to be a very interesting look at how you can set up networks, and I hope you get a great deal out of it. So, networking for success for dyslexic adults. So, first we're going to look at why would we set up networks? Well, change takes a really long time. The Open University's Professor Pugh said at one point that fast change was 9 months in an organisation and normal change was 4 years. So it does take rather a long time, but this is a way of actually accelerated internal change in organisations. It's also a really good way to create a dyslexia-friendly workplace. And networks can be very supportive to individuals, which when I did the research on the factors for success for adult dyslexics was one of the 10 factors was that they had had some support around them. And there's been some very recent work on that done in New Zealand, which is also proving the same thing, that actually individuals really do succeed if they're in a supportive environment. And networks can help to create a culture which is inclusive and safe for disclosure, for actually being able to say, you know what, I'm dyslexic, which is quite a problem in many organisations where people do not feel safe to say they can disclose, and that means they don't necessarily have the ability to get the reasonable adjustments they need to do their job well. So that's clearly quite a vicious circle that we want to stop. So there are 3 types of networks that we could think about. There are those that are created to achieve change. And you quite often see those actually, not just in organisations, but outside them. So something like the Dyslexia Adult Network, which I started 5 years ago, was designed to bring together the key charities and individuals involved with adult dyslexics, and it was created specifically to achieve change, some of which we have had some positive activities from now, but 5 years on, as I say, change is not quick. Sometimes networks are created for sharing, particularly within organisations, and sometimes we create a network in order to resolve a particular problem. If we don't want to use a dyslexia network, though, there are some other options. The BDA has a mentoring scheme, and you can download the brief about how to set up the mentoring scheme directly from the dyslexic area on the BDA website at bdadyslexia.org.uk. You could also set up something called Dyslexia Champions. This is run by one of our collaborators, Jeanette Beetham, and is a scheme whereby individuals who are either dyslexic or are interested in dyslexia in an organisation get together. They do the BDA's level 2 accredited programme in dyslexia awareness, and then they're in a position to both champion it in organisations and increase awareness, or they know how to signpost to external help should it be needed. Some organisations, such as Hampshire Police, have gone the route of having in-house workplace needs assessors, and this is quite a good idea because the in-house assessor will already know the culture, will already know the kind of shape of the jobs and the politics of the organisation. And so it's one of the things that then doesn't have to be learned. Whereas if you're an external assessor, that's one of the things you've got to get a grip of very quickly when you go in to do an assessment. And then the BDA has a dyslexia-friendly quality mark and now the new dyslexia-friendly aware mark, which are both systems, a bit like Investors in People, where you have a set of criteria and the organisation works towards gathering information to prove that they are doing the things that are necessary. So those are all additional options in relation to thinking about whether you have a network or not. But how do you do it? If you want to actually start a network, how do you make it happen? Well, the first thing is get others involved. Do not attempt this on your own. The reason for that is because it can quite quickly become quite a lot of work, and also if you're on your own you can be singled out as being, oh, it's that dyslexic person, I think if you've got a few of you together, then it's much easier and you can share the work out and be clear about what you're going to do. You will definitely need to work out what your objectives are. So, you know, what kind of network are you going to have? Is the network the right thing? We've just gone through the 3 types of network in the previous slides and the alternatives. So work out what you're trying to achieve here, and then you can go from there. Set up an initial event. For example, it might be a presentation or a webinar or a social event, and follow up with anybody that's attended. You may find that from those attendees you can grow your group of people who are involved and share the work out even further. And here are some examples of where networks already exist internally. Ernst & Young had a very significant network where they had run, by the end, a help desk, and they were getting very sizable numbers of inquiries coming through to that help desk on a regular event. Hampshire Police set up their own network. The Fire Brigade Union have an extensive network, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and now there is a new one that's been set up across the whole of the civil service. PricewaterhouseCoopers have one, and so does Imperial College in London. So here's a worked example to show you exactly how you might go about it. John and Ali were both dyslexic, and they worked in an organisation that was not particularly dyslexia aware, and so they decided that they wanted to challenge this by setting up a network. And they decided for their objectives that what they wanted it to be was to source and exchange information. So they decided on a date for the first meeting, and they got a more senior manager to agree to host it. That's quite a useful thing to do, by the way, because hosting meetings can be costly. And if you want to put on any kind of refreshments or whatever, then it's quite useful if somebody's got a budget. It also means you're more likely to get heard in the organisation if you have a senior manager behind you. They invited a guest along to be a speaker. Now, you might think about, well, who am I going to invite? And it's very often that you might want somebody along who knows quite a bit about dyslexia. Now, just a bit of warning here. Most people, if they come from one of the charities such as the BDA or whatever, are going to have to be paid for because they'll be a member of staff, and that costs money. But it might be that you think about volunteers who work in local associations or in other areas of the BDA, for example, who might be willing to come along and be a speaker for you. If you're not sure of the topic, a very good one for a first meeting often is about being parents of dyslexics. Very often we have discovered that adult dyslexics will not necessarily come along to something about their own dyslexia. They've lived with it and they're just getting on with it. However, if their child is dyslexic and is struggling at school, that is a very, very big motivator for trying to find out what to do about it. And so getting somebody to speak about the aspects of being a parent of a dyslexic child can often be a really good way of getting a large crowd in for the first meeting. So having sought their speaker, they then send out email invitations to those they knew, and they put up notices around the canteen and in public places at work. On the day, 25 people turned up, and it was a great success. Everybody was very happy, and so on. And as an expectation for you, if you get up to 25 people, that is a really good turnout for a first event. The network will probably grow bigger than that, but you can expect that it's only those who have sufficient self-esteem and courage to come along first that are going to go to the first event. Then they gathered the attendees' contact details and afterwards emailed them to thank them for attending. They went on to organise another event a month later, and they chose a topic that had been very popular at the first event. There had been a lot of questions at the first event. And during that second event, they asked for volunteers to help them run the network and were able to recruit 3 others. As time went on, they became known in the organisation as point of contact and could signpost others to help. So this is exactly how you can go along creating your network internally. And as I say, it's really important to think about your objectives to start off with and who's going to share the work, because what you will find is that as the network becomes more popular and people learn about it, people will turn to you for help. And it's important that you get your enough supporters so that you're not swamped by some of the requirements that people will come up with. So that's how to do internal networks. And we think at BDA they are particularly important because it's a means of actually getting more people involved in creating awareness, which certainly within the workplace seems to be the single most important factor. Most employers are not terribly aware of dyslexia, or at least what it really means. So in relation to that, what's the BDA doing about it, and what's the BDA about? Well, BDA is the foremost charity in the area of dyslexia and specific learning difficulties. It's the largest of the charities. It still isn't large though. We have about 27 staff, many of whom are part-time. And so one of the strategic reasons for encouraging things like mentoring schemes and networks and so on is because we want to very seriously kick above our weight, which we do, but also spread that word very widely. And we need your help to do so. The BDA campaigns for a dyslexia-friendly world, and it has positively changed a number of things. And here are just a couple of examples. One is adjustments for exams, things like GCSEs and A-levels and International Baccalaureate, but also exams for nurses, exams for doctors, exams for people passing their driving tests, for doing music exams, and just about everything you can think of with it being an exam. And we also did a lot of work with Access to Work, which is the government system for providing for reasonable adjustments in the workplace. They provide some funding for this, and they also provide workplace needs assessors. We have provided training for the advisors that are at Access to Work about dyslexia. We've done some face-to-face training with their learning reps. We're currently providing e-learning training for them. And we also campaigned with them to ensure that no dyslexic person needed a diagnostic assessment to be able to get help from Access to Work. And that is the case now. You do not need a diagnostic assessment. If you ring them up and say, I'm dyslexic, their next question will be, what difficulties do you have at work? And you'll go from there. So that's our campaigning. The BDA also runs services which include the free national helpline, and they have a range of online resources which I really do urge you to have a look at, particularly things like the outcomes of the funded Dyslexia project, which produced films and handouts and so on, all of which are available for free on the BDA's website. As paid-for services, we also do diagnostic and workplace needs assessments. We have a very large training activity going on, including lots of e-learning. We produce publications like the handbook, which is widely known about, and the Dyslexia Friendly Schools Guide and various others. And in terms of the workplace, there is the code that, for recruitment and selection and so on within workplaces. We also have the role of being the accreditor of specialist teacher training courses and accrediting individual specialist teachers. And we're also a membership organisation, and we would be delighted if you were able to join as a member. Shortly, the BDA will be doing a new series of events, but this is to give you some idea of the kind of events that are run. Do look at the website at www.bdadyslexia.org for all the latest news. We run webinars regularly. There are some special ones like this one throughout Dyslexia Awareness Week, but they are run as a regular event, and they have some really very interesting topics. And if you go to the shop, you can actually, which is on the website, you can actually see the recorded webinars that have been done previously, which you can purchase. We run conferences, roughly 3 to 4 conferences a year. The very next one is on neurodiversity within the specific learning difficulty group, which covers dyslexia and dyspraxia and dyscalculia and so on. And that's going to be held in London on the 9th of November. And as I record this, places are still available if you want to go. The gala dinner is held on the 30th of November in Drapers Hall in London, and this is an amazing evening where we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of dyslexic individuals who've been voted by their peers to have done something very special. So it's a very, very inspiring evening. And finally, you could also join us to have fun. Our fundraising events cover things like bicycle races and the Northern Run and so on. And so you can have lots of fun whilst hopefully raising a little bit of funds, because it is that money that pays for the campaigning for the things that we all want, which is a much more dyslexia-friendly world. Thank you for listening to this webinar. If you have any questions, or if you, for example, would like to have the toolkit for networking, that is available free of charge, and you can download it from the website. If you look at the dyslexia section of the website, you should be able to find it fairly easily on the menu. But if this has left you with any questions, then please send them to helpline at bdadyslexia.org.uk. And if you put the header on it, post-webinar inquiry, then it will find its way to me, and I'll be delighted to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much indeed for listening to this webinar.